Chapter 5. The boneyard lit up like a summer carnival at night. Dozens of aircraft landing lights blazed in ghostly blue hues. Engines sputtered to life and roared as though their long-dead pilots pressed for full throttle. Spectral machine gun fire belched from the dormant fires like dragon's breath. Abdil and his men fired wildly in all directions, their counterattack drowned out by the boneyard's barrage. I peered around a stack of tires at the Spitfire. A woman's barely visible silhouette laughed and bounced around in the cockpit. My jaw slacked open. Ava! The ghost snapped me a proper salute. Ava had played a couple of tricks on me before, things like hiding my keys or stashing my beer in the freezer. I knew she could still interact with the mortal world, but I'd never seen her do anything on a level like bringing the boneyard to life. And I had to say, it was impressive. I glanced at my watch, 4:52 a.m. Ava had risked her very existence leaving the safety of the Skymaster this close to sunrise. Hopefully she had enough left in the tank after her light show to make it home safely. I mouthed a silent thank you and ran. The boneyard hadn't been organized in any meaningful way. It was more like a labyrinth whose walls were brick and mortar of discarded parts and decomposing aircraft. If the cleric and his men were following me, they didn't have a prayer at maintaining line of sight. I could double back behind them, hit my ingressi, and poof. A furious howl crushed my confidence. Then a second. Ice-cold dread filled my stomach and clawed into my chest. I threw myself into the dark space between a couple of aircraft engines. Horrified, I watched a figure-clad mercenary emerge on top of a Vietnam-era transport chopper. The figure balanced perfectly on the drooping rotors and swept his weapon slowly over the boneyard, probably searching with some kind of night vision or thermal imaging. Perfect. Something else about the mercenary's gear struck home. Their respirators hadn't jumped off the proverbial page at first, but the snout-like gas masks in tandem with the lupine howls left no doubt. The cleric had indeed outsourced his soldier of fortune needs to the supernatural community. And hired werewolves. In the pecking order of supernatural badasses, werewolves ranked pretty high in terms of wrecking potential. A werewolf whose true form had been unleashed was weapons-grade nightmare fuel. Their hardened, uncompromising reputation spanned the Foreverscape and had been 100% rightfully earned hands down. Faster-than-light speed travel was suddenly more likely than escaping the boneyard. I had a few custom-pressed silver bullets on the Skymaster that could have evened the odds, but going back was out of the question. I know a world's dumbest idea candidate when I hear one, so I let it go. Instead, I waited for night vision to finish his sweep. He gestured a few hand signals, then hopped down from the helicopter. I swallowed a breath and moved. I took a roundabout path, vanishing into the shadows beneath the bomber wings and between old jeeps. The ingressi portal waiting inside the cockpit of the P-51 was less than 20 yards away. I shifted my backpack's shoulder straps. Almost there. I brushed through some tall grass, staying low, until I sidled up against an old bomber. The hair on the back of my neck bristled. On impulse, I dropped to the ground. A brawny paw swiped the air on my face had just been. Sparks screeched and the old plane groaned at the 6-inch crescent claws carving into its side. I screamed. You would too if a werewolf was trying to disembowel you, and rolled beneath the plane's fuselage. Feral, yellow eyes stalked me into the suffocating darkness. The mercenary had shed his mask and combat gear from the waist up, exposing a coarse coat of lustrous black fur. Thin lips curled back over muscular jaws full of grisly fangs. My brain fumbled for something witty and came up empty. Shocking. The wolfmerk snarled. I clawed the earth, scrambling backwards toward the rear landing gear. The wolfmerk's lips stretched back even farther into a sickening grin. It lowered its bulk and slithered in the tight space beneath the fuselage. You want to talk disconcerting? Imagine a 6.5-foot, 200-something-pound wolf gliding like a cobra. I frantically searched for the Mendaport. A painted neon green cross screamed from the plyboard marker leaning against a few stacks of worn tires. If I could get the wolfmerk to chase me, I could sling his hairy ass into another zip code. I flipped onto my belly and commando crawled for all I was worth towards the spell's marker. The wolfmerk's partner roared in front of me. My heart shifted into 6th gear, strumming every artery I had. This mercenary's fur was a tangle of ratty golden brown, his jaws snubbed like a jackal's. Its claws slashed the dark space between us. Had it been patient, I might have crawled straight into its fangs. My shoulders wrenched as I flung myself away from an agonizing death. I struggled frantically, searching the darkness about my neck and shoulders, and something had me locked into place. My hand finally brushed against something cold and smooth. A loose piece of fuselage had snagged my backpack. I cursed. Surrounded by wolfmerks, trapped by my own damn backpack, Mendaport trap out of reach. It was that kind of day. A flash of inspiration struck. Mendaports and gravity snares weren't the only traps at my disposal. The Crimson Glaive had taught me to craft weapons from thin air. I was in a boneyard surrounded by all kinds of weaponable things. I had more than thin air to work with. I had a Russian bomber. I gritted my teeth. There was absolutely zero chance I was going to let myself be mauled and let that scumbag cleric recover the winter's bite. I dug in and thrust my legs. The sudden force snapped the rusted metal binding me, and I hit the dirt with my knees. If forward and back weren't options, I'd have to make another one. There was a break in the embankment supporting the bomber, and it looked just wide enough to be accommodating. My hands and feet tore at the earth, fangs gnashed behind me, and a claw nicked my boot as I pulled myself through the gap. I rolled free of the fuselage and focused my will. The essence swelled in the air, my mind filled with images of natural power. Earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes. I needed everything I could get. The Russian AR-2 weighed nearly 9 tons. My teeth set. I grasped the air, pulling with everything I had. Vibrating waves rushed up my forearms. My hands tingled, nearly going numb. But I did it. Unseen power seized the plane, pulling it toward me. The metal beast of an airship groaned and shook. Its arthritic landing gear finally gave in, and snapped. The plane careened onto its side. Its right wing tore free as it rolled, kicking up a cloud of rusty dust. The wolfmerk's snarls abruptly ceased. A fistful of claws twitched from a bloody stump outside the hole I'd used to escape. The rest of the wolfmerk hadn't been as lucky. Throwing around 9 tons of World War II bomber might be your idea of a warm-up, but every atom in my body was on fire. With at least 4 mercs down, the possibility of survival seemed less ridiculous. I crammed my exhaustion into a mental box and hauled ass for the P-51. That's far enough, Abdiel thundered from behind me. Morbid curiosity spun my head around. Nothing there. Abdiel's unenhanced voice came from behind once more. I stumbled to a halt and froze. Drop the gun, turn around, and I can't emphasize this next part enough. Slowly, the cleric said. The cleric had either trained under Batman in his free time or he'd called up enough essence and gated in behind me. The latter meant he could sling some serious magic on par with any of the senior Crimson Glaive clerics I'd trained under. At a glance, I'd have figured him for early 20s. Gating was a technique that took years of training and discipline to attain. If he could do that before he was 25, then damn. I think I'd prefer the Batman scenario. There wasn't much of a choice. I dropped my gun. The cleric had me dead to rights for a second time. It was really starting to get under my skin. Abdiel centered his hand cannon on my chest. At less than 10 feet, his chances of missing were effectively nil. I'd like to say this isn't personal, but that'd be a lie. His face contorted into a blood-chilling sneer. You're a heretic piece of shit, and my only wish is that I could kill you twice. I've been called worse by better, I replied with as much bluster as I could manage. The Crimson Glaive are cowards, new guy. You're trash. Pond scum. You hurt people to get what you want. Taking the winner's bite from you animals was the easiest decision I've ever made. The cleric thumbed the pistol's hammer. He practically blurred over the space between us and pressed the gun's barrel into the bridge of my nose. He glowered, pure fury. We do what we must. We do it without hesitation because nobody else is willing to stand in our place. Yes, innocents are hurt, and yes, I'm often the one hurting them. But someday in the cold dark, I'll pay for my decisions. But theirs is a necessary sacrifice. His posture eased by a fraction. His voice dropped to a whisper. I dream of them, of the little ones. A wellspring of hate surged to my chest. You use children as weapons, asshole. Nothing you have to say will ever make that okay. I'll never give you the winner's bite. So the way I see it, you can either shut your trap and shoot me, or shut your trap and walk away. My pleasure. I'm certain you didn't act alone, though. You must have had some sort of help in breaching our vault. Others may be interrogated in your place. Perhaps someone close to you. A former partner, perhaps. Abdiel's glare resolved into an evil smile. The eternal flames await, Frostbite. I tensed and glared hellfire. Right back at you. A streak of pearlescent blue streaked past Abdiel's eyes. He threw his hands up on instinct, swatting at the sudden threat. One pass was all Ava needed to distract him, and that was more than enough. I seized his wrist, twisted it at an ungodly angle, and smashed the cleric's hand cannon into his cheekbone. New guy went limp and hit the dirt. I pried the gun from the cleric's hand and shoved it into his face. He gave a distant groan but didn't move. My finger twitched on the trigger. Now was my chance. I could end the cleric right now. I could eradicate whatever terrible, sorrow-filled vision for the world he had. All I needed was to squeeze the trigger. That he's so young, my conscience said. So young to be filled with such reckless hate. So was I when I joined, replying to nobody. There's no shortage of adrenaline-charged, adolescent war machines in the Crimson Glaive. Ice constricted my heart. He knew the risk when he joined up. He's not Unity. You can't just kill him in cold blood. You know better than that. Stupid self. I pinched the bridge of my nose. My God, I hated arguing with my conscience. One of these days it was going to get me killed. Probably sooner than later. I squeezed the pistol's grip. I don't have to do a damn thing, and this conversation is grating on my nerves. You're better than that. Fine. I dumped the pistol's magazine and flung it into the boneyard. I wheeled around and tossed the gun in a separate direction. Stupid conscience. I crouched beside the cleric, pistol ready, and palpated New Guy's throat. It was pounding furiously. An angry welt was beginning to swell in his cheekbone. Dude was going to wake up beyond pissed and with a splitting headache, but he'd wake up and that's better than he deserved. Distant howling reverberated in the growing daylight. The wolf marks I'd sent for a swim in the duck pond. Jake, what are we going to do? Ava shouted from the cockpit of the toppled Russian bomber. The ghost hue had drained to a dull gray. Her eyebrows arched high of concern. It's almost sunrise. I can't help anymore. I'm sorry. You did enough, Dollface, I said, trying for a macho 1940s vibe. It came out horribly cartoonish. Get back to Dougie. The wards are wrecked, but maybe you could call a couple of friends over to mind the house. Ava squealed. She clenched her fists in excitement. You mean girls' night? I winked at her. Don't overdo it. Keep an eye on things, and I'll try to swing by in a couple of days. I'm sure Sleeping Beauty here will be keeping tabs, so it's best if I stay low. The ghost blew me a kiss. Be careful, Jake. They won't be pulling any more punches. My eyes narrowed, and a familiar icy flame burned in my blood. Neither will I.